Hi guys, my name is Tuomas, this is Sound of Free, and in this video I'm going to talk about Beach Boys myths, and a lot of these talking points have been on the top of people's tongues now that sadly Brian Wilson passed away a few weeks ago, and the Beach Boys became, for at least a moment, this sort of mainstream talking point, especially in the music communities online. And for someone like me who's a big Beach Boys fan, all of these things are something that I know, just I don't even question these things, or they don't even come to my mind because I'm so familiar with their story and their catalog, their work, and even their personal lives. So to be honest, I don't want to sound like a downer. Obviously, it's been great to see people talking about the Beach Boys, sharing their music, but at the same time, the amount of these wrongful myths and these claims that I've seen people say online about them and their work, to me it's almost disgusting. It's shocking. And so anyway, in this video I thought that I actually wrote down, like, there's about 10 of these wrongful claims, these myths, so to speak, that I thought that would be fun to say a few words about each of them. Not go too much into detail, because otherwise this would be like a 2-hour video. But all of these points are something that you see me talking about in many of my videos, and maybe even in the future I could do separate videos of each of these. And some of these are sort of supporting each other, but let's just get into it. A lot of these came from Reddit discussions, from music subreddits, several different subreddits, big ones, and a lot of these had a lot of upvotes, so they were like very popular. People really think this way, and this only really tells me, well, let's just get into it. Anyway, the first one, probably one of the biggest ones, was that the Beach Boys were just a one-trick pony, and Brian Wilson was just a one-trick pony, that he only was able to do this sort of surf baroque pop harmony thing, that sort of that today/Pet Sounds thing, and that was it. Like, that he never progressed, and the Beach Boys never progressed from that. It's not true. It's not true at all. Anybody who claims this clearly hasn't listened to their albums. Each of their album from '64 onwards sounds completely different from anything that they did before. So, not true, false. And well, this next one is kind of supporting that they never developed after '64. That's one of the biggest claims that I saw in a lot of places. Not true. Okay, third one. Brian was everything, the rest have no talent. This is a super big one. You still see this all over the place. It's not true. Pretty much all of the original members of the group are multi-instrumentalists, songwriters, great singers. Can you name many other bands that really can do that? That all the members have great singing talent and voice, are songwriters themselves, and can play pretty much all of the band instruments. Can you name many big groups, others, like that have 5 members and can do all of that? There are others too. I'm not saying that the Beach Boys are the only one, but the claim that they have no talent outside of Brian Wilson is just stupid. It's really stupid to claim that. Okay, and this one is a big one too. They are not a real band. That the Beach Boys never, they didn't play their own instruments. Actually, that was the second, the follow-up thing on my list. The Beach Boys didn't play their own instruments. What a load of crap. Isn't true. Yeah, Brian used on many session musicians in the mid-60s, because the schedule that they had to put out albums, for their contract for Capitol was crazy. They had to be touring at the same time, while Brian had to be back home creating the music. So obviously when the guys were on worldwide, international tour, they couldn't be playing on those records. So Brian used session musicians for a lot of, their stuff in the mid-60s when the scheduling was just so hectic. But they did play their own instruments. They started out as playing their own instruments on their, first records. And if you listen to their very first album and even Surfing USA, Surfer Girl, it's mostly just them. Even today, it's mostly just the Beach Boys playing. Listen to something like When I Grow Up to Be a Man. And if you say, people say this about Dennis too, that, oh, he didn't know how to play drums. Come on, listen to those recordings. He's a fabulous drummer. Even someone like Hal Blaine actually had praise for Dennis. So, to say that Dennis sucked as a drummer is pretty crazy. Anyway, but we're not talking about that really today. Okay, one other thing that I saw a lot of times written was that the Beach Boys songs are just corny, simple songs. And this is once again like written by or said by people, obviously by people who don't really understand music that much. Really the genius, like in a nutshell, the genius of Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys is to have been able to write so freaking complicated tunes and actually make them so easily accessible that they actually seem, by the first glimpse, super simple, even though they're quite far from it. So, not true. Obviously, yeah, they do have a few simple tunes as well, but they're pretty much like, you can count them by one hand, or two hands maybe, these sort of 2-3 chord songs. But, almost all of the songs that you'd think that are super simple actually are quite complicated. Okay, next one. And this was, once again, a big one. A lot of people wrote this one. The Beach Boys were only a singles band. They have no cohesive albums. Not true. Once again, just not true. All the way up until... I'd even say that That's Why Got Me the Radio from 2012 is a pretty cohesive album. Their last one. And the 85 album is a cohesive album. Pet Sounds is a cohesive album. All Summer Long is a cohesive album. Surfer Girl, Surfing USA... Summer Days, Summer Nights, Pet Sounds, Smiley Smile, Friends, Wild Honey, Sunflower. I can just go on and on and on. They have so many cohesive, great albums. They are not just a singles band. No way. And once again, just people who say this obviously just haven't heard their music outside of, the hits on the radio. Once again, one big one, stopped being good after Pet Sounds. This is a major one. And you also have to really, if you want to blame somebody for this one, you also have to blame the group and the management, because the official story by the documentaries and by the management, the story that they continue to sell on different books and documentaries and so on, is that they sort of faded away after Pet Sounds, which is not true, just not true. Listen to the music, it's all there. Another one concerning sort of that same time period, Brian disappeared after shelving of Smile, so 67. Not true. Brian continued to work on new music, write new music and record new music all the way up until, well, his passing, really. Of course there were like here and there sections, like maybe a year or two where he didn't work that much. Mainly probably in the early 80s, but the late 60s he was still very heavily on, involved on Smiley Smile, Friends, maybe not that much on Surf's Up, but Holland, Caught in the Passions, he's on those albums, and then he came back with heavily with, back with 15 Big Ones and Love You, and so on, so he's all over the place, really. So, just not true. And then this was really sad one that I saw somebody say, that God Only Knows is the only great song that Brian ever wrote. And it's sort of a double-edged sword, I guess, because, while I get it, God Only Knows is a very pretty tune, it probably is a perfect pop song, but the way that everybody was using it once again as a tribute, it's kind of like, it's kind of sad, because all the great music that Brian did, all those complex compositions, and phenomenal production and arrangement, you know, things that he did, whatever it was, that it's somehow all just, for many people, it's just everything else is sort of just forgotten and overlooked, and they just sort of say that, okay, God Only Knows, that's the great song that he did. But literally, he wrote that in like 30 minutes, and obviously he loved the tune, but like he did so much more great stuff, you know, Surf's Up, rest of Pet Sounds, Today album, like She Knows Me Too Well, in the back of my mind. Even like his solo work, something like Midnight's Another Day, From There to Back Again from their last album. Like, come on, like he's got so many great tunes, amazing compositions. To me, it's really sad that for a lot of people, Brian is only just that one song. And the people who think this way, they are just missing so much. Go and take a deep dive in their body of work and you'll be amazed. And I would be amazed if you'd say, after listening to all of Brian's work, that God Only Knows is your personal favorite song. And the last one is also a sad one, that Mike Love is just a talentless hack. Well, this is like, I don't really even want to go too deeply into this, but you know, it's just not true. Mike Love's a great lyricist, great singer, especially his harmony vocals, amazing stuff. And yeah, like, just no. Come on, just listen to their albums, listen to Today. Mike wrote most of the lyrics on that one. Amazing stuff, like on par with Pet Sounds. And his vocals, especially in the 60s, but also in the 70s, when he sort of started to find his softer voice. And in the early 70s, when he did a lot of that sort of, especially live, that sort of very rough rock and roll thing. You know, just to say that he's talentless is just complete bogus. Not true. Write down in the comment section if you've heard something else written or said about the Beach Boys that just is not true. I would love to see like sort of like what you can come up with or what you have faced, because I didn't even use that much time searching these. I was literally just reading a few of these sort of tribute pages or conversations. It was just one after another, like bum bum bum. It was just so many wrongful myths that you see. Like, I would think that all this information is available out there, so it's kind of weird that this just keeps spreading. It just means that we, you know, all us fans and people who talk about the Beach Boys and sort of help to share their story, and, you know, content creators, whether it's like written form or, you know, historians and everybody, you know, we have a lot of work to do, you know. So anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching. Hopefully see you soon again on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.